It all happened last night. It'll keep happening. As I lay in my bed, cold sweat upon my brow, I cannot help but think to myself, how did it come to this? 7 years ago, my girlfriend and I planned a trip to Salem. She was always fascinated by the supernatural and the macabre. I personally didn't care for it all that much, but I cared for her. God, did I care for her. So, despite my own disinterest, I resigned myself for the trip. As we drove north through the mist and past the trees, I couldn't deny a growing feeling of anxiety within my breast. It was a feeling that I was unfamiliar with. I chalked it up to nerves. After all, I was never one for superstition. Of course, I knew the history of Salem. Who doesn't? I knew of the trials that sentenced all those innocent women to death. I knew of the many stories of hauntings and strange phenomena that supposedly plagued the town. And while I did feel some small measure of pity for the poor souls that had suffered there, I did not feel some supernatural force at work. That would be ridiculous, wouldn't it? When we finally reached Salem and parked at the hotel, I felt a small weight lifted off of me. I guess it was just the car sickness, I thought to myself. I checked us in and we unpacked our stuff. My girlfriend was so happy to be there that she was practically bouncing with excitement. Remembering that smile on her face never fails to bring pangs to my heart, because that was the last day I'd ever see her smile. That day, we took in the sights, visited all the tourist attractions that we could, of which there were many, and headed back to our hotel room. We waited until nightfall before we headed out again. We walked along the silent streets of the town, nothing but the orange-yellow glow of the street lamps to hold back the darkness. She held onto my arm and looked up to my face with a mischievous smile that I'd come to fear. My girlfriend was kind of a rebel and always liked to shirk the rules whenever she thought we could get away with it. This was one of those times.
Hey,
she said, pointing ahead of us.
Let's go there.
I looked in the direction she pointed and saw the dark silhouette of a house. I recognized it immediately. The house was one of the many attractions we had visited earlier in the day. Supposedly, it was haunted by some ghost or some such nonsense. While I held no credence to such ridiculousness, I could not deny that looking upon the place gave me a deep sense of uneasiness. The feeling that I had felt in the car had returned. I'm not sure, I said.
What are you?
She asked mockingly.
Scared?
No, I objected in a vain attempt to protect my manhood. She just smirked at me and rolled her eyes.
All right,
she said.
Let's go back.
No, I said, catching her arm as she started to walk past me. She looked at me with the raised eyebrow. We're going to the house.
Great!
She exclaimed as she turned on her heel and started making her way towards the house. I had no choice. If I was going to come out of this whole thing with some measure of dignity intact, I'd have to go into that damned house. With an audible sigh, I trudged along behind her as she practically skipped towards it. As we drew closer to it, its features began to become much clearer to me. In the daylight, it was 3 stories high with white windows and a matching door to go with them. It was composed of what I knew to be red brick, yet, in that horrible darkness, I could see neither red nor white, only the same inky blackness that swallowed the features of all that surrounded it. In front of the building was a tree. In the daylight, it was so unremarkable that it barely garnered notice from me. During the night, however, its innocence was stripped away. Now its branches appeared to no longer be a life-bearing gift of nature, but rather the twisted, gnarled fingers of a malevolent creature reaching towards the heavens with malicious intent. Looking at these sights only served to build upon my growing anxiety. What was once a simple pressure in my chest now became an awful, tingling sensation that crawled up my spine and settled upon my shoulders. But I bore with it, for her sake. She really seemed to be enjoying herself, and I didn't want to spoil her fun. She was so happy then. If only I knew. If only I had known what would happen. I'd have never taken us to that forsaken place. God, help me. If only I had known. As we grew closer to the house, the feeling in my chest intensified. My girlfriend seemed completely unabated by any such feeling. I imagined that, to her, it was just a spooky house. But to me, every step was akin to inching closer to the edge of an abyss. Cold sweat began to pour down my face as we grew closer. In all my years, I'd never felt as afraid as I did in this moment. Every instinct I had was telling me to run, to get away from that awful place. Finally, we reached the door. That godforsaken door. The moonlight hit it at just the right angle so as to illuminate it. It appeared to me as pale as death itself. My girlfriend reached out to the door handle and tried to open it. No such luck. I must admit that I felt no small measure of relief at the sight of that. "Well, we tried," I said with as much nonchalance as I could muster. "Let's just head back to the hotel and get a bite to eat. I'm thinking pizza. You?"
Hold your horses.
She said as she rifled in her pockets for something. After a moment, she produced a small metallic object that I did not recognize. She then brought it up to the door handle and started to pick the lock. "Where did you learn that?" I asked with a mixture of surprise and dismay.
A girl's gotta have some secrets, you know?
She said with a sly smile, saying,
And done.
as the door gave an audible click. She pushed the open door and it obliged her with an audible groan that seemed to carry through the house and past us both. Without any hesitation, she strolled confidently into the house. I took one step after her, and the whole world stopped. In an instant, I felt the air get considerably colder. While Salem wasn't exactly known for its warm climate, this was something altogether different. It was like being put into a freezer. The hair on my arms rose up, goosebumps covered my skin. I shook violently. When I didn't fall after her, my girlfriend turned to me. Now, she noticed my poor state and came rushing to my side. I realized then I could not hear her. I could see her lips moving, I could feel her touch as she tried to shake me from whatever malignancy had taken a hold of me, but I could not hear her, nor could I speak to her. I was positively frozen in place. Then I fell, and the world went black. How long was I out? I did not know, nor did I know where I went. It was a strange feeling. When I departed the waking world, I could not tell you where I was then. It was like a dream, and yet I was completely aware of myself and my surroundings. Only there were no surroundings, just an inescapable void of nothingness. In that void, from beyond, came a soft, whispery voice. It was faint, but it was there, just outside the range of making out what it said. Then, the darkness condensed itself into the shape of a person. This person was composed of pure shadow and held no features on its face. It came towards me. I was fixed in place. I could not move. Slowly but surely, it closed the gap between us. Only when its non-face was inches away from mine did it speak again. There was no loss of understanding this time. It spoke in that soft, whispery voice that I've come to hate.
Tell them all.
I woke with a start and was greeted to the walls that were pure white. I was in a hospital. My girlfriend was by my side. Her eyes were red and puffy as though she had been crying. When I tried to call her name, my voice came out hoarse and raspy and I felt a rough pain in my throat.
Don't talk,
she said as she held my hand. With my free hand, I pointed at my throat with an inquisitive question on my face. She told me that I froze up at the house. I started screaming and wouldn't stop until the paramedics took me away. I didn't remember screaming, but the pain in my throat was evidence enough for me to believe her. I laid my head back down and stared up at the ceiling while she did her best to comfort me. Though I had no trouble hearing her this time, her words did not register. All I could think of was that voice and the message it carried. Tell them all. Everything fell apart after that. The following night, the shadow person came to me again, bearing the same message as before. Tell them all. I didn't know what it wanted from me. Tell them all? Tell them all what? What did it want? These questions plagued my mind at all hours of the day and night. I tried to understand just what happened at that godforsaken place. I didn't understand. I still don't. Was it a spirit, or was I just losing my mind? I did not know. I began to fear the very concept of sleep, knowing that thing was waiting for me to close my eyes. I began to do whatever I could to fend off sleep. I would fill my hours with meaningless work and chores. I'd spend money on an overabundance of energy drinks and coffee to keep me awake. But all creatures need sleep. So did I. And sooner or later, my body would crumble and I'd collapse. And without fail, the thing would be waiting for me, always saying the same thing. Tell them all. Each and every time I woke from that horrid nightmare, my determination to never go back intensified. I began to sleep less and less, but the longer I stayed awake, the more my mind deteriorated. I began to hallucinate the shadow person, and in time, I began to hear its message even when I was awake. Tell them all. Tell them all. Tell them all. The stress began to destroy me, inside and out. I became much shorter with people, especially with my girlfriend. She had been there since the beginning, and though I'm not proud of it, she'd been there as I'd slowly destroyed myself. I lashed out at her at every chance I got, not because she had done anything wrong, but simply because she was the only one around for me to vent my frustration at. Naturally, my abuse against her and myself finally became too much for her to bear, so she left me. I remember being very upset at the time, but looking back on it now, I believe that she made the right decision for both of us. Her leaving me had finally been the wake-up call that I needed. I'd checked myself into a mental rehabilitation facility and spent the next few years going through the psychotherapy and consuming the medically prescribed pills. It wasn't easy. There were times when I believed that I'd made a horrible mistake and wanted to do nothing more than to be free of that place. But in time, the hallucinations receded and I began to see the creatures less and less. It wasn't completely gone, but I would have several nights where I wouldn't see the thing at all. In time, I'd finally regained some of the person I'd once been and was cleared for release. I've never shared this story with anyone before today, but as I've said, the creature never completely disappeared. There are times when I sleep that it returns to me with its incessant demand. Tell them all. I don't know what it is, I don't know what it wants, but I'm sharing this story with you all in hope of finally putting this chapter of my life to a close. Now that you know my story, I have one thing to ask of you. Please, tell them all. Valeria and I matched on this app called Hilly. It was actually her who sent me a like. There is a beauty unbeknownst to everyone that when they find it, their heart will finally relax. A beauty which triggers obsession even in the most grounded of men. To me, Valeria was that beauty. I had never known the color brown could glow until I saw her eyes. She had black hair cut at her shoulders, little pink lips. She was short and curvy and had a nose ring. She applied her eyeliner with such surgical thinness that it seemed her eyes were actually rimmed with a border of black. According to her bio, her favorite animals were beluga whales. She studied tech in college. She liked alternative rock like I did. And she attempted to get me into the anime she enjoyed. I only ever continued watching it because she would nestle at my side when we watched. One of her pictures was of her lying on a maroon bed in an unlit room with a band of sunlight falling on one side of her face, one brown eye glowing, the other shadowed, her face in the middle of an eclipse. And so I had to watch her beauty disappear into whatever torpor she entered when she became my wife. Was it me who induced this silence in her? I had nothing but love for her, and yet she shriveled up. She dried up. My wife, Valeria. I blame myself. I feel so sorry, as though it was my fault. It must be. While we dated, Valeria was bubbly. She laughed when I sprang myself on her and tickled her in the park in Wakefield, and she would squeal and shriek and cover her face with her fists to laugh. Her fists, two little things poking out of her sweatshirt sleeves. And what serenity hushed over us when I relented, and she ended up on her back looking up at me. She was so alive then. Although pale, I could see the life moving at the speed of clouds on a windy day beneath her cheeks. Piggyback rides, walks in Salem. We even went through the Wax Figure Museum in Salem, but we did so much before we wedded. Before Valeria must have realized what a commitment that was, what effort that required. And her vitality stalled. Did her heart stop long enough at the altar to affect the cloud speed blood her arteries pumped? I remember we used to go on long drives up north, seeking out historic spots. Valeria had a thing for old asylums, and even though most were absolutely gone, she still liked to walk the grounds they used to stand upon. She wore my t-shirts to bed, We would take selfies of her kissing my cheek. We danced in the kitchen in the house in Winthrop we bought together. God, that street in Winthrop was our street, no matter how identical the houses were. They were technically condos, as someone lived below us, but we called it our house. We had a living room which looked out onto the street. We decorated it to the color scheme of dark oak brown and light tan colors with glass cabinets and glass coffee tables. It made us feel classic and mature, and in this room, we would watch anime together. There's so much I could recollect about our time together when we were engaged, when married life held us over like mistletoe. I think I believe that if I adore the memories enough, cling and squeeze and grasp onto them enough, she'll come back to life. Except she isn't dead. It's almost as though I am dead to her. How she used to love me. I even missed the FaceTime calls we used to have early on. How shy she was the first time she told me that she loved me. She was leaning over her phone and looked ready to tuck her head into her sweatshirt like a turtle. She said it so fast and soft.
I love you.
I was so surprised. I was speechless. Luckily, she was too embarrassed to expect a quick reply, but I did eventually manage to say a breathless, I love you too. Yes, we had our magical moments, our inside jokes, our favorite shows beyond anime, our favorite meals. But there was an arid side to Valeria which I first mistook for her being introverted. She would shut down during and after arguments, which were rare, but they did happen, which wasn't a bad thing. But she shut down and tapped out of the relationship for a few days. They weren't arguments threatening our relationship. When things were normal, sometimes she would be a one-worded speaker. There's nothing wrong with that either. She was affectionate, but not as much as me. Of course, nothing wrong with that either. The glow in her brown eyes was a delicate thing, and I learned to never startle it with overwhelming displays of affection. She got comfortable. I got comfortable. We found our happy medium and got engaged. I was actually kind of surprised that she said yes. She even looked surprised and brought her hands to her mouth. As always, her sleeves reached up to her knuckles. And I remember our conversations when we were at the head of the wedding table.
I feel so embarrassed in this,
She said, referring to her wedding dress. Don't be. You look beautiful, I said. Then we laughed about our relatives when the food was being served. It started subtly a couple months into our marriage when adulthood encompassed us. We were more than accustomed to the depressive Boston aura trying to wander down our street in Winthrop. But luckily, our neighbor downstairs had put up a no soliciting sign on the door. Reality in all its Pandora grayness was outside our living room while we remained cuddled up on the couch after long days of work. We went for walks, but then we started walking less. She wanted to walk less. I began to walk alone. One evening, I came home from a walk to find she had turned the TV off and was just sitting on the couch like a therapy patient without the therapist. And then on another evening, she was untalkative at dinner in our little kitchen. It was a rainy day, so I didn't think much of it. Valeria loved the smell of my shaving cream. Whenever she heard the razor dip and pull the water into the sink, an oddly swampish noise to be in a suburban home, she would rush into the bathroom, sit on the tub, and watch me. After I rinsed and rubbed a towel over my face, I would feel her nose impact my cheek. She would stand on her tippy toes to do so. She did this literally every time I shaved. Sometimes while we were in bed, she would caress my face and say,
You need to shave.
Even when I didn't. Why do you like that smell? I asked one time.
Because it reminds me of you.
How happy she had sounded when she said this. I wish I could go back and experience feeling her arms create their harness around my waist. It was one of those moments where her brown eyes glowed like chocolate thrown on lava as the lights above the mirror threw their fluorescence into them. One time, a rare occurrence, I nicked my chin before a family event, and she whined as she dabbed a tissue on the wound, kissing it afterwards. I remember the first time Valyria didn't appear when I shaved. I made a conscious effort to create noise by dipping the razor in the sink, sniffling, clearing my throat, and dipping the razor again. I looked over my shoulder at the doorway. Surely she must have caught a whiff already. Was she asleep? I stepped out, shirtless and face half encompassed in smeared white fluff. She was in the living room on her phone. She didn't acknowledge me, so I stepped back into the hall and into the bathroom where I finished shaving. It was the loneliest shave in my life, but I was gonna have to get used to it. I'll spare the slow burn details. It happened rapidly. In an attempt to get her attention, I went a week without shaving, but she either ignored or didn't notice the stubble congregating the face that she used to smell. I was only able to hold her when she fell asleep. Intimacy became a chore. Her kisses lost the ability to fly, and thus more often did her mouth fall from mine before the kiss was truly done. Imagine birds locking talons and dancing midair only for one to give up and fall, leaving the other to spin out of orbit like an aggravated satellite. She maintained a daily routine, still putting on eyeliner and going to work, always coming home. I took her to a psychiatrist in Beverly. She was quiet the whole drive while I put on the music we used to like. But when the psychiatrist walked her back into the lobby, he said that everything about her was fine. He pulled me over and whispered,
"The honeymoon period might be over. Don't worry about it, son."
"Are you sure, Doc?" I asked, to which he patted my shoulder and smirked.
"Yeah. Sounds to me like you just have a wife now."
I looked at Valeria in the lobby. "This happens?" He nodded. "How do I rectify it?" He shrugged. "Do you have a wife?" I asked, to which he shrugged again.
"Did you think it would be cherry fizz and bubblegum all the time, son?"
I almost said yes.
"Look, she's probably just settled in and comfortable now. Take her out to dinner. Find ways to spice it up in the bedroom. And for Christ's sake, do the dishes."
"I do the dishes," I said.
"Welcome to married life, son."
He slapped my back and walked away. I was half tempted to race after him, grab his arm and demand answers, but Valeria was waiting for me. I just couldn't believe him. Not Valeria, not us. She loved me and I loved her. She had been the most important kiss of my life, not the human turtle who had black sweatshirts instead of a shell. Not the woman who squished her nose into my cheek every Sunday morning. I did try to spice it up in the bedroom, but she was robotic, performative, unenthusiastic. It was awkward, stale. It only led to impotence. We never did it again. When we went into Boston and went to the aquarium, it smelled like cold pickles while we watched the penguins. She didn't even giggle at them. I went to hold her hand, but she didn't grasp it back. We went outside to see the sea lions. I mentioned beluga whales, but she didn't respond. I bit the inside of my lip. "I think they have some in SeaWorld," I was saying. "Beluga whales," I sniffled. "It must be exhausting, but it must be hard to be stuck inside that tank, huh?" It was the first evil thing I'd ever said to her, and she didn't even flinch. I knew she heard me. Did she hear me? Had she lost her sense of hearing in the tank of our marriage, without enough room to swim? I was sick with an immediate guilt, and I couldn't even apologize in case she didn't understand the subtext of my remark. I needed her. How beautiful it was to wish she'd snap back into herself, snap her head and notice me, and woo and whine and melt and take my face and take me and hold me and hug me in front of the sea lion, but she did not. Couldn't she hear the slightest shift in my voice? No. But what if she did and just didn't want to face it? Didn't she want me anymore? She started spending all her time on a chair in the living room. No more anime. No more talking. She was alive, but suddenly soulless. Because we hadn't kissed as much anymore, her lips had gone from light pink to bluish purple, the color of veins. Her eyes were a frozen shade of brown now, like icy mud. I got down at my knees at her feet as she sat there, wringing my fingers around her ankles. "Valeria," I murmured. "Are you still in there?" She looked beyond me. Oh, what indifference was in her eyes. I wanted to make them glow as I had before in moments where we had to catch our breaths. And this moment was desperately intimate. For the way I pleaded her name was like an upside-down version of how I would have whimpered her name in the bedroom. Valeria. I wanted to crawl my hands up to her face, but I only felt allowed to touch her ankles lest my touch disgust her. I wanted to spring up and kiss her. undo the color that her lips became. But I knew it would have been wrong without any approval in her eyes or consent. So I begged her to love me again that night as gray dusk and streetlight yellow mixed outside on the street in Winthrop. I cried at her knees, even letting my soggy face down in her lap once. But she was unresponsive. She was hollow. And so our house became haunted by her, haunted by a perfectly living woman. And it was only haunted because she stopped everything, every little thing which love was made of. I waited on her no longer out of love, but out of desperation, so eager for her to respond to my selflessness. She no longer slept with me, instead standing by the bed at night while I cried myself to sleep. Did she want to comfort me? I could feel her watching me, but I did not know with what emotion or thought. How deeply I wanted to feel her touch fall down on my shoulder for something, for her to do anything, say anything. But she stayed beautiful despite the change in color of her lips, the pallor of her skin, the still water of her eyes. She remained absolutely, truly beautiful. My wife. I brought her a wheelchair, which we used to pitifully transport her from room to room. She could walk, but I don't think she cared to. She got up to go to the bathroom, but I pushed her around the house in it. She was perfectly fine walking outside of the house, but she needed her wheelchair when she was with me. I often parked it in the living room where I knelt down and pleaded for her to love me. How I prayed at her feet for affection. How I became addicted to her lack of response in case she actually came back to love. Come back to love. That was it. Come back to love. Valeria. Come back to love. I became much more of an addict in withdrawal instead of a husband. I still loved her, but now I needed her so much. My heart demanded her. She was unimpressed. She no longer looked smooth, but now she looked damp, sticky. Her whole chemistry had altered. Yet, when I touched her face, it felt the same. She looked so white, but she had a pulse. She ate, she drank juice and water. She still went to work, but no longer loved me. I asked and asked, Valeria, I need to know. Do you love me? I pursed my lips in anxious patience. Valeria, I croaked. Valeria, I groaned, and then I cried in my wife's lap. This became our new routine, our new date night. Please, please, please. I hated how much my voice had changed. Everything sounded so snotty throughout my tantrums. I hated the honking in my voice as I begged for attention, how English shriveled off into some kind of drooling language. I became a slug at her feet. Beauty seems so useless when all the beauty remains but the affection doesn't. We think it's tragic when a beautiful woman is the victim of an acid attack or loses her fingers in some accident which leaves her with a coral reef kind of hand instead of a normal one with fingers. And we think it's a tragedy when a woman's face is ripped of its beauty by some chimpanzee or pit bull. But what a tragedy it is when the beauty still remains, but all affection and all sense of soul is depleted. Am I selfish for thinking so? I don't think so. She became soulless when commitment began, and hid her soul from me. I had a full-on beard by the time I wheeled Valeria into the Salem Wax Museum on Derby Street. She was still beautiful. Still so beautiful.
Looks to be about the right height for the time period. Very realistic.
The museum manager noticed while circling around my wife.
She could be the new goody bishop in the dungeon scene. Her lips are a little blue, though.
My mistake, I said. The museum manager proceeded to ramble, but I was too fixated on my wife to listen to him. Get up, I thought. Get up. But she did not.
We'll have to take out the nose ring, of course.
The museum manager continued. Get up, Valeria. Get up. Please. I would have been on the verge of tears had I not become so accustomed to her unresponsiveness and lack of affection. I could tell she was acknowledging me from within her shell of indifference, but good God, that was not enough. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be wanted, but I guess it just wasn't meant to be that way. So I stood and watched the museum manager wheel my wife into the exhibit past wax sculptures of angry Native Americans and helpless pilgrims huddled together. An image of Valeria holding her fists up to her face flashed in my mind, with her long black sleeves at her knuckles. Oh, how in this vision her brown eyes glowed. glowed for me, glowed because she loved me. My wife, which marriage ossified, was gone. And I took the deepest breath of my life before going outside to cry in Salem.